creating our content as single objects or copying and pasting it is all very well. But what happens when you have a collection of objects that make up something, say for example this phone here, and what we want to do is we want that to be one separate sort of group or collection of objects, and we want to be able to reuse it as much as we want. Well, the concept of reusable content isn't so sort of far from the truth there. What they're called is they're referred to as being blocks, and what I can do is I can take these lines or these objects that we've got here, I can group them together inside of a block, and then I can reinsert that block into a drawing anywhere that I want to. Now the first thing I've got to do is I've actually got to create this block. So what you'll find is on your home tab there's a few little sections here about blocks, and one of them, the small icon here in the top right hand corner just there, is create a block. Okay, so it's called create a block definition, but effectively when you create a block you're defining it, so there's a little bit of semantic there. So I'll click on create, and the first thing I'll be asked to do is to specify a name. You can see we've got this new dialog come up here, so I will call that phone, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select my objects. Now the easiest way of doing this is just by dragging a box around them. So I'll say select objects, I'll click on the interactive button, and now I can left click and drag my box around those objects. When I'm done, I'll right click to stop selecting, and that brings me back to my block definition. You can see now that what I've got here is a little icon that shows me what that block looks like. Now this is going to be a fairly low resolution icon, so don't panic if what you see up there is if you've got a curve and it turns out to be a sort of a little bit angular, don't worry about that. One thing that I would say about this is, for goodness sake, remember to do a base point. Okay, if you don't do a base point, then what will happen is AutoCAD will use the 0, 0 position on your drawing as the base point, and your object, whenever you go to insert that block into the drawing again, however far away it is from the 0, 0 point of your drawing, that's how far away it's going to be offset when you go to import it into your drawing in the next time you want to use it. So I've seen students quite often clicking, just sort of repeatedly left clicking and just saying, but my block isn't drawing. And what happens is if you zoom out of your drawing just a little way, what you'll find is just off to the sort of, it's normally sort of the top right of the drawing, you find there's about 50 or 60 different blocks that they've created in sort of one area. So do remember, use your pick point carefully. So I've just clicked that pick point there, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to decide, where do I want that pick point to be? Do I want it to be at one of the corners, or do I want it to be the midpoint of a line, or do I want to use an extension line or two extension lines and say, do I want it to be in the middle? Well, I might have mine as being in the middle, so I'll left click this point here, and when I'm done I can put a little bit of a description in if I want to. So I can say phone, I'll say handset, and you could put whatever else you wanted in there. Say it's a, I don't know, a DC 500 phone. There you go. The block units is going to be in millimeters because that's what our drawing is in, and once I'm done I'll press OK. Now it doesn't appear that anything's particularly happened now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mouse over this element now, and you'll see as I mouse over it, all of the objects highlight. It's no longer a set of separate entities. It's now a group, a block. And if I click on that, you can see I've got a grab handle here, which is just in the middle of the object, exactly where I specified it. So if I wanted to move this phone, I want to move it up a little way, there we go, I can do. Now one thing I should say about these is you can't stretch blocks. That just doesn't happen. So there's a few things you need to know about them. You can scale them, you can move them, you can rotate them, you can do everything else, but you can't stretch them. If I then want to put another phone in here, so say we've got two phones Tony here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say insert, and I've got a list of the blocks that are in my scene, and I've got the phone here, so I could click OK, but we'll just go over this quickly. If I wanted it to be rotated, I could say specify my rotation angle. So I might make that, I don't know, 45 or something like that. I'm not going to, but we might do. Or I could specify that on screen. My scale, I want it to be 1 by 1, or I could again scale this unnaturally. Anyway, so that's quite useful for windows. You can always scale sort of the length or the width of a window. My insertion point, I'm going to specify on screen. Okay, so it's all fairly straightforward what we're seeing here. So I'll click OK, and I've then got another phone that I can place within my scene. So that's quite quickly how we create blocks, and that's just a simple block, bear in mind. What we're going to do next is we're going to look at how we use the Design Center and our tool palettes to integrate with that block creation.